Thoth. To the ancient Egyptians, he was more than a god. He was the pulse of knowledge itself. They called him the scribe of the gods, the divine recorder who etched truth into the cosmic ledger. Imagine a figure who wasn't just taking notes on what happened in the world, but actively shaping reality by the act of recording it. Thoth was said to be the keeper of the divine balance, ensuring that the scales of Ma'at, the principle of truth and order, were never tipped. In the temples of Hermopolis, his name was whispered with a mix of reverence and awe. His domain was vast: wisdom, writing, language, magic, science, and the very measurement of time. He was the master of hieroglyphs, the creator of letters, and the architect of the calendar. Without him, the Egyptians believed, chaos would seep into the world like water through a cracked wall. But here's the part that rarely makes it into the mainstream retelling. Within the mythos of Thoth's role as divine recorder lies an implication, a dangerous one, that his writings were not merely symbolic. Many ancient initiates believed Thoth's words were active keys, not passive scripts. They weren't just recording the universe. They could unlock it. Think about that for a second. In a world where writing was magic, literally, what would it mean to possess the true script of creation? In hieroglyphic thought, words weren't inert symbols. To inscribe a name was to bind it. To speak a word of power was to make it real. If Thoth's writings captured the underlying code of reality, then to read them correctly would be to alter that code. In other words, the knowledge itself could become a doorway. In the shadowed chambers of Egypt's great libraries, now lost to time, there were rumored to be papyri and tablets credited to Thoth that no ordinary priest was allowed to read. Some accounts speak of the Book of Thoth as a manual for commanding the natural and supernatural alike. In the surviving fragments of later Hermetic writings, there are veiled hints that this knowledge could transcend time and space, even open portals between realms. And while the Book of Thoth became a kind of mythical shorthand for ultimate wisdom, there's something curious about how it is always described. The stories never talk about it being easy to find. It's always hidden, locked away, or protected by lethal traps, sometimes even curses. In some Greek and Coptic traditions, merely glimpsing a page could drive a mortal insane because their mind couldn't handle the flood of divine information. Why would such wisdom be so carefully guarded? The answer lies in the nature of the scribe himself. Thoth was not a whimsical teacher. He wasn't about handing out enlightenment to anyone with the curiosity to ask. His role was to preserve the balance, which meant his most potent teachings were a double-edged sword. Used wrongly, they could destroy far more than they could heal. If we step back and think about it, this is not unlike the idea of restricted knowledge in many ancient traditions. Across cultures, we find myths warning about the dangers of giving humanity too much too soon. Whether it's Prometheus stealing fire or the biblical God barring Adam and Eve from the tree of knowledge. Thoth's position in Egyptian cosmology fits this pattern perfectly. He is both the giver and the gatekeeper, the one who records the truth but decides who is ready to read it. But for those who were ready, those who had passed the trials of initiation, Thoth's teachings could supposedly unveil the structure of the cosmos itself. Egyptian initiates spoke of words of power that could command spirits, alter fate, or open the way to the Duat, the mysterious realm of the dead and the gods. And there's where our trail begins to wind into dangerous territory. Because in many of these myths, the Duat is not just the afterlife. It's a vast network of realms, layers of existence, each governed by different laws of time and space. Ordinary souls pass through it only in death, guided by divine protection. But what if, with the right knowledge, one could open a passage into it while still alive? And more importantly, what would be waiting on the other side? Here's where the role of scribe becomes more than metaphor. If the act of recording is also the act of creating, then Thoth's writings might serve as maps and keys in one. His inscriptions could be coordinates for crossing worlds, coordinates written in a language only the initiated could understand. It's important to remember that in the Egyptian worldview, the boundaries between worlds were not absolute. The gods could move between them. Certain priests, during ritual, could bridge them. And in this liminal space between life and death, mortal and divine, the scribe of the gods stood at the center. The question was never if it could be done. The question was who should be allowed to do it. Some accounts say that Thoth himself used these passages to travel between the earth and the field of reeds, a paradise-like realm beyond mortal perception. Others suggest he ventured even further into realms that predated creation itself. In these journeys, he supposedly gathered the wisdom that became the foundation of all magic and science in the Egyptian world. If we read between the lines, there's a clear subtext. To follow Thoth's path was to step outside the limits of the human condition. But doing so would mean walking into places not meant for mortal minds, places where the rules of survival are not our own. In this sense, Thoth's most dangerous secret wasn't just how to open the door between worlds. It was knowing what to do once you crossed it. And yet, as with all forbidden things, the danger was also the lure. From the very first tales of Thoth, there were whispers of those who sought his private teachings. Pharaohs hungry for power, priests eager for divine insight, and seekers hoping to escape the ordinary world altogether. The risk didn't matter if the reward was mastery over reality itself. If the Book of Thoth was a whisper in the shadows, then the Emerald Tablets were a thunderclap that echoed through centuries. Their legend doesn't sit quietly in a museum display case. It leaps across cultures, religions, and mystical traditions, mutating and resurfacing every few hundred years like a coded message that refuses to die. Ask 10 occult historians about their origin, and you'll get 10 different answers, but one thread runs through them all. These tablets supposedly hold the distilled essence of Thoth's forbidden wisdom. The name alone, Emerald Tablets, immediately paints a picture of something precious, unbreakable, and eternal. In some accounts, they are exactly that, green crystalline slabs inscribed with glowing symbols, impervious to decay. In others, they are pure metaphor, a mystical emerald representing the highest spiritual truth. But whether physical or symbolic, they share a singular purpose: to encode the process of transcending the limits of human reality. Many versions of the story place these tablets in the hands of Thoth during Egypt's Golden Age. Some Hermetic traditions equate him with Hermes Trismegistus, a figure who straddles Egyptian and Greek thought. In this telling, the Emerald Tablets were his ultimate work, a condensation of cosmic law, alchemical transformation, and interdimensional travel. The text we know as the Emerald Tablet today, the famous one that begins as above, so below, may only be a fractured echo of a much longer and far more dangerous original. Here's where things get intriguing. In certain mystical commentaries, the tablets aren't just instructions for turning lead into gold. They're maps, layered diagrams of the great work, not just in alchemy, but in consciousness. And hidden within those diagrams are said to be literal coordinates, keys for finding the points where our world's fabric is thin enough to step through. These weren't portals you stumbled across by accident. The tablets, if read correctly, were thought to reveal alignments between stars, sacred sites, and moments in time when the door between worlds could be unlocked. Imagine Stonehenge, the pyramids, and astronomical charts all functioning as a lock and key system, but one designed not to open a physical gate, but a metaphysical one. It's no wonder, then, that later rulers and mystics desperately sought them. Legends say Alexander the Great scoured Egypt for the tablets. Medieval alchemists in Europe claimed fragments had reached them through Arabic translations, each line riddled with cryptic allegory. Even in the Renaissance, scholars like Isaac Newton privately copied translations of the Emerald Tablet into their notebooks, convinced it held the true science behind creation. But here's the catch, and it's the same one that shadows all of Thoth's supposed works. The tablets are protective by design. Without the right understanding, their language collapses into riddles, contradictions, and paradoxes. The uninitiated might read them and see nonsense. The half-initiated might think they understand, and in that overconfidence trigger forces they can't control. One fragmentary legend tells of a priest in the late Ptolemaic period who deciphered part of the tablet's code. He allegedly attempted the rite of passage described within, aiming to enter the duat while still alive. His body was later found in the temple, intact but utterly lifeless. No signs of violence, no visible cause of death. The locals whispered that his soul had crossed over, but failed to find the way back. From the outside, this can sound like pure myth-making, a morality tale to scare the curious away. But here's the strange part. So many unrelated cultures share nearly identical warnings about crossing thresholds without preparation. The Tibetan Bardo Thodol, the Mayan Popol Vuh, and certain Gnostic texts all speak of realms beyond ours where a traveler must know specific words, symbols, or names to pass safely. In this light, the Emerald Tablets might not be unique in concept, but they are unparalleled in reputation. Now, if we imagine them as an ancient instruction manual for navigating these realms, the question becomes, why emerald? Ancient Egyptians valued green stones not just for beauty, but as symbols of life, rebirth, and immortality. An emerald tablet would carry connotations of unending vitality, a fitting medium for knowledge meant to transcend death itself. The Hermetic texts often paint the tablets as indestructible, immune to fire, flood, or the slow grind of time. This ties into the idea that true wisdom, especially dangerous wisdom, can't simply be destroyed. Even if the physical form is lost, the knowledge has a way of seeding itself in new forms, hiding in plain sight until someone with the right awareness finds it again. Of course, skeptics point out that no physical emerald tablets have ever been verified. But in the esoteric view, that may be the point. The tablets could be as much an inner architecture of the mind as an external artifact, an encoded path that exists only when the seeker reaches a certain state of consciousness. In that sense, you don't find the tablets. You become able to read them. This blurring of the literal and symbolic is classic Thoth. He was a master of embedding multiple layers of meaning in the same text, so that each level of initiation unlocked a deeper truth. The surface might speak of stars and metals, but beneath that, it might map the soul's journey or outline the geometry of an actual portal. And here's something that really sparks the imagination. In certain esoteric circles, there's a belief that the emerald tablets don't just open the door between worlds, they also stabilize it. That is, without the knowledge they encode, any crossing would be chaotic, dangerous, or impossible to reverse. In this way, the tablets are not just a key, but also a safety mechanism, a way of making sure the crossing doesn't destroy both sides of the threshold. Think about how precise that makes this knowledge. Not just when to open the door, but how long to keep it open and exactly how to close it again without leaving a scar in the fabric of reality. If such a thing exists, no wonder it's been hidden, mythologized, and wrapped in allegory for millennia. And yet, the lure remains. The promise that somewhere, somehow, the emerald tablets could be recovered or decoded drives seekers to this day. Some claim they're buried beneath the Great Pyramid, others that they lie in a hidden chamber under the Sphinx. More fringe theories suggest they're not on Earth at all, but in a parallel realm accessible only through the very portal they describe. Whether they're carved stone, indestructible crystal, or a purely spiritual code, the emerald tablets embody the very heart of Thoth's most dangerous secret. That there's a way to bridge the gap between worlds if you are willing to risk everything to do it. Opening a door between worlds is not like walking through the front gate of a temple. It's not just about wanting it enough. In the traditions surrounding Thoth's forbidden wisdom, the act of crossing over is a precise, disciplined operation, a blend of cosmic timing, symbolic resonance, and personal transformation. The wrong word, the wrong moment, the wrong state of mind, and the attempt could collapse before it begins, or worse, succeed in ways the traveler never anticipated. The ancient Egyptian worldview placed tremendous weight on harmony between the seen and unseen realms. Rituals weren't just theater, they were engineering. The first step in opening the hidden door, according to fragments attributed to Thoth, was attunement, aligning the practitioner's mind, body, and spirit with the cosmic order, or Ma'at. Without this alignment, any journey through the do-it or beyond would be unstable, like trying to navigate a storm without a compass. Attunement involved fasting, purification baths, and recitations of sacred formulae. The idea was to strip away the noise of the ordinary world until the seeker could perceive the subtler vibrations of the threshold. Some accounts describe a 40-day period of preparation, during which the initiate would sleep in a darkened chamber, consuming only specific herbs and water drawn at dawn. The darkness wasn't punishment. It was a way to heighten the inner vision, to make the mind see without the eyes. But alignment alone wasn't enough. There were symbols, geometric forms, and hieroglyphic sequences that acted as keys. Many were based on celestial patterns: the rising of Sirius, the positions of Orion's belt, or the alignment of certain temples with the solstices. To Thoth's followers, these patterns weren't decorative, they were blueprints. Just as a door has a specific lock that only a certain key can open, the boundaries between realms responded only to the right combination of cosmic and earthly signs. This is where the so-called words of power come in. In Egyptian magic, knowing the true name of something meant having authority over it. To cross into another realm, the practitioner had to speak or inscribe the true names of the forces guarding the threshold. These names weren't shared lightly. They might be hidden in myths, embedded in the structure of temple hymns, or disguised as ordinary vocabulary that only the initiated could decode. Imagine a ritual chamber deep beneath a temple, its walls carved with lines of glyphs. At the center stands the initiate, surrounded by a precise arrangement of symbols on the floor, circles, spirals, and intersecting lines that echo the constellations overhead. Incense burns in the air, thick and sweet, carrying plant essences meant to shift the consciousness into a liminal state. The initiate chants, not in the language of daily life, but in the resonant tones of the ancient tongue, each syllable vibrating in the chest like a tuning fork. At the exact moment of astronomical alignment, perhaps when the first light of dawn pierces the temple's inner sanctum, the initiate places their hands upon a carved image of the door itself. The door is not physical. It is a representation of the threshold. The symbols around it tell a story of creation, destruction, and rebirth. The initiate speaks the final name, the one learned only after years of preparation. And then, something shifts, not a dramatic explosion, but a subtle reconfiguration of perception. The room is the same, and yet not. The air feels thicker, sounds slightly muted, as though the world has been wrapped in a different layer of reality. In many accounts, this is the moment the hidden door becomes visible, not in the sense of a glowing portal, but as a distinct passage of awareness. Here's the truly unsettling part. The door is often described as opening inward toward the initiate, which means that stepping through is less about going somewhere else and more about allowing that elsewhere to come to you. Some traditions warn that what greets you on the other side is not always benevolent. Just as travelers may wander into hostile territories in the physical world, so too can a soul encounter forces in the unseen realms that view intruders as threats or prey. In the more guarded teachings attributed to Thoth, there is an emphasis on exchange. Crossing worlds isn't free. Something must be given to balance the act. This could be an offering of symbolic value, like a sacred object, or something more personal, a vow, a memory, or a fragment of the self. The exchange serves as both a token of respect and a stabilizer for the crossing. Without it, the door may not open, or worse, it may not close behind you. And this is where the emerald tablets re-enter the picture. In some interpretations, they contain the exact sequences, symbolic and phonetic, that align the initiate's energy with the target realm. Each symbol has a corresponding vibrational tone, and when they're enacted in perfect harmony with celestial movement, the threshold responds. It's as if the entire ritual is a kind of password protocol, but one that engages the body, voice, and soul simultaneously. Some esoteric historians argue that these procedures have been preserved in fragments in disparate traditions, The geometric mandalas of the East, the Kabbalistic tree of life, even certain aspects of sacred architecture in medieval cathedrals. The idea being that the knowledge was too dangerous to remain in one place, so it was scattered like puzzle pieces across cultures and epochs. The psychological component is just as critical. Ancient initiates were warned that what you see beyond the door is shaped, in part, by your own mind. Fears may manifest as obstacles, doubts as barriers. Likewise, clarity and courage can open paths that remain invisible to the unready. This means that preparation isn't just about memorizing symbols or perfecting chants. It's about mastering the inner landscape so it doesn't betray you when the worlds meet. One late Hermetic fragment puts it plainly. He who would pass must be as stone to the chaos within, and as flame to the truth beyond. The paradox here is deliberate. A traveler must be unshakable and yet fluid, grounded and yet transcendent. Only in this state can they navigate the unstable terrain between realms. All of this raises an inevitable question. Even if one could open the hidden doors safely, why risk it? The ancients believed that beyond the threshold lay not just otherworldly landscapes, but the archives of creation itself, the memory of the cosmos before time began. A seeker who could enter, learn, and return would wield knowledge beyond kings and emperors, knowledge that could heal nations or plunge them into ruin. But the price of that pursuit, both in preparation and in potential consequence, was staggering. Many never returned. Others came back altered in ways that defied explanation. Eyes that seemed older than their years, voices that echoed with strange harmonics, or sudden, inexplicable insights into events they could not have witnessed. Every great secret comes with a shadow, and in the case of Thoth's forbidden wisdom, that shadow is darker than most seekers realize. The myths speak softly at first, half-warnings tucked between lines of praise for Thoth's brilliance. But when you look closer, the cautionary tales outnumber the triumphs. Opening the hidden door between worlds is not just a feat of knowledge. It's a gamble with stakes that extend beyond your own life. In the Egyptian worldview, the Duat was not a monolithic afterlife, but a labyrinth of realms, each with its own rulers, laws, and hazards. It was a place of trial as much as passage, where even the blessed dead faced tests before reaching the field of reeds. For the living to enter, it was to invert the natural order, a bold act that could bring divine favor or incur the wrath of those who guarded the boundaries. Ancient accounts tell of initiates who sought Thoth's path and failed, not because the door would not open, but because they underestimated what lay beyond it. In one story, preserved in scraps of Demotic script, a high priest named Nesimon performed the crossing ritual in a hidden chamber beneath Thebes. Witnesses outside the sanctum reported hearing a strange wind and the sound of many voices speaking at once. When the chamber was finally opened, Nesimon was found standing, eyes wide open, mouth frozen midward. He was alive, heart beating, lungs breathing, but utterly unresponsive, as though his consciousness had been left somewhere else. For years afterward, he would whisper fragments of phrases and languages no one could identify, before dying in that same unbroken stance. To the ancients, this was not just a medical tragedy. It was a spiritual caution. The mind, they believed, could become caught in the in-between, unable to return fully to the body. Such a fate was considered worse than death, for the soul was neither here nor there, stranded in an eternal twilight. And the risks were not confined to the traveler alone. Several temple inscriptions warn that an improperly closed portal could bleed into our realm. This wasn't about monsters pouring through, at least not in the Hollywood sense. It was subtler, stranger, sudden shifts in weather localized to a single room, the appearance of unfamiliar constellations in the night sky, or time itself stretching and compressing in ways that disoriented everyone nearby. One record speaks of an entire village experiencing the same dream for 3 nights straight after a failed ritual, each dream depicting a vast black river under 2 suns. Why such extreme consequences? Part of the answer lies in the ancient understanding of balance. Ma'at was not merely a moral code. It was the scaffolding that held reality together. Opening a door between worlds meant altering that balance, however briefly. Without exact precision, the disturbance could ripple outward, fracturing the stability of both realms. This is why Thoth, as the divine scribe, was such a paradoxical figure. He alone, according to myth, could cross the threshold at will, recording events in both the mortal and divine registers. But he also enforced the boundaries, ensuring that such crossings were rare and necessary, not undertaken on a whim. His wisdom was not for the impatient, and those who sought it without readiness often met with disaster. Historical echoes of these warnings persist well beyond Egypt. In later Hermetic circles, texts attributed to Hermes Trismegistus repeat a common refrain. The key turns both ways. The hand that opens must also close. This was interpreted as both a metaphysical truth and a moral imperative. To cross over and fail to seal the way was to invite collapse, an unraveling of the delicate weave that kept the world apart. There are also stories of the toll. Many accounts insist that safe passage demands payment, and not always in the form of offerings. In some initiations, the traveler was instructed to leave behind a part of themselves, a memory, a skill, even an aspect of their personality. This wasn't symbolic. Upon return, the initiate might find they could no longer recall a loved one's face or had lost the ability to speak their native tongue. The sacrifice was the lock on the door, ensuring it stayed closed after the crossing. And then there is the more troubling possibility that some doors, once open, don't close completely. The ancient city of Akhmim, for instance, was said to have been abandoned after a series of sky fissures appeared over its temples, descriptions that modern minds might liken to rifts or distortions in the air. The phenomenon reportedly lasted for decades, with strange lights visible at night and the occasional appearance of beings the locals did not recognize. Eventually, the city fell silent, its people dispersed. In modern occult circles, some interpret these tales as exaggerated folklore, but others suspect they are records of failed crossings. They point to similar accounts from other cultures, Mesoamerican stories of tear lines in the sky, or Polynesian legends of pathways to the gods that were sealed after misfortune. The pattern is always the same: a crossing attempted, a breach left open, and a community disrupted. What makes Thoth's forbidden wisdom so dangerous is precisely this. It tempts with ultimate knowledge while demanding absolute mastery. You cannot stumble into success. You either complete the crossing flawlessly, or you invite consequences that ripple across lives, perhaps even centuries. This is why the Emerald Tablets, if they indeed contain the full sequence for opening and closing the door, are so heavily guarded by myth. They are not just a manual. They are a warning wrapped in instruction. Even for those who succeed, there is a lingering effect. Ancient initiates described it as the doubling of the soul. After returning, they felt as though part of themselves remained in the other realm, watching through a second set of eyes. Some considered this a gift, granting visions and insights. Others found it unbearable, haunted by glimpses of places and beings they could not touch, voices whispering just beyond the edge of hearing. The truth is that every crossing is a bargain. You leave with something you didn't have before, but you also lose something you can't get back. And while legends glamorize the power gained, the cost is often understated until it's too late. The age of temples and papyrus scrolls is long gone, yet Thoth's most dangerous secret refuses to fade into the sands of history. In the modern era, the myth has shifted form, slipping out of the sanctuaries of Hermopolis and into books, forums, online courses, and whispered conversations at niche spiritual gatherings. What was once cloaked in incense and hieroglyphs is now shared in PDFs and podcasts. But the core temptation remains the same: the promise that somewhere, hidden in plain sight, lies the knowledge to open the door between worlds. Today's seekers often approach Thoth through the lens of Hermeticism, a tradition that has absorbed, distilled, and reinterpreted fragments of Egyptian, Greek, and later esoteric teachings. For these students, Thoth is synonymous with Hermes Trismegistus, the ultimate teacher who bridges science, magic, and spiritual philosophy. The Emerald Tablet, in its well-known short form, is one of the first texts they encounter, and though its language has been modernized, the cryptic quality is deliberate. Phrases like "as above, so below" are treated as mantras to be unpacked, meditated on, and lived, rather than quickly solved like riddles. But beneath the surface, something subtler is happening. Many contemporary interpretations focus on personal transformation, alchemy as a metaphor for refining the self. This is a safer, more digestible path for the casual student. But in the smaller, more secretive circles, you still find the older, riskier narratives. These groups speak less about self-improvement and more about actual translocation of consciousness, the same concept the ancients called crossing the threshold. In the modern niche of advanced occult study, seekers exchange theories about what the door between worlds really is. Some argue it's a psychic construct, an inner architecture of the mind that, when mastered, can reach into realms of shared collective consciousness. Others insist it's literal, an energetic phenomenon that can be triggered under the right alignment of place, time, and personal vibration. They debate the coordinates, sacred geometry in old temples, magnetic anomalies in remote wilderness, moments of astronomical convergence that mirror ancient star maps. Technology has entered the conversation, too. There are fringe researchers attempting to recreate ritual conditions using electromagnetic fields, sound frequencies, and light patterns designed to shift brainwave states into what they claim is the gateway frequency for threshold contact. Whether these experiments are legitimate or reckless depends on who you ask, but the parallels to the ancient methods of sound, symbol, and timing are undeniable. The internet has also become a double-edged sword in this revival. On one hand, it allows knowledge to spread at unprecedented speed. Digital archives put translations of Hermetic texts into the hands of anyone with a Wi-Fi connection. On the other, this accessibility strips away the traditional safeguards. In the Temple era, an initiate might spend years proving their discipline before being taught even a fragment of the crossing rites. Now, someone can stumble across a half-complete ritual online and attempt it in their living room, without the preparation, guidance, or understanding to navigate what happens next. And yes, there are stories, modern ones, of people claiming they succeeded. Most are vague, couched in metaphor, perhaps to protect themselves or their audience. But some are chillingly specific, accounts of slipping into a landscape that didn't match any earthly geography, of encountering intelligences that communicated in symbols rather than words, of returning with a feeling that weeks had passed while only minutes ticked by on the clock. The skeptical mind will dismiss these as dreams, hallucinations, or the result of deep meditation. But for those who've studied the old accounts, the similarities are hard to ignore. The themes, distorted time, unfamiliar skies, the sense of a toll paid, echo the ancient warnings almost too perfectly. In modern spiritual commerce, the myth of Thoth's forbidden wisdom has also been commodified. You'll find weekend workshops promising initiation into the Emerald Light or activation of the Atlantean doorway, often blending genuine historical elements with a heavy dose of marketing. This commercialization has a strange side effect. It trivializes the risk in the minds of the curious, making the act of crossing over seem like just another self-help exercise. But the old initiates would have shuddered at such casualness. To them, even a symbolic reenactment of the crossing carried weight, and the failure to respect that weight could invite disaster, physical, mental, or spiritual. Yet the hunger remains. Why? Because for some, the idea that our world is not the only world is not just comforting, it's intoxicating. Thoth's promise, whether literal or metaphorical, is that there's more to existence than the boundaries we're born into. For a seeker who feels trapped in the ordinary, the possibility of stepping beyond it, even for a moment, is worth the risk. The modern niche thrives on this tension between curiosity and caution. Online forums exchange translations of obscure papyri, alongside cutting-edge physics papers. Private Discord groups shared GPS coordinates of energetically thin places. Amateur astronomers sync sky charts to ancient calendars, looking for the next moment when the heavens align like they did in the temple days. And through it all, Thoth's figure, whether as ibis-headed god or as the robe Hermes, looms over the conversation, equal parts guide and gatekeeper. One cannot ignore the cyclical nature of this pursuit. Every era rediscovers the legend, dresses it in the language of the time, and pushes it forward. Yet the core is unchanged. The door remains. The key remains. The cost remains. Whether written on emerald stone, encoded in myth, or hidden in the mind's architecture, Thoth's forbidden wisdom still offers the same proposition. Step across, and everything you know will change. But as the ancients would whisper in shadowed halls, when the door opens, it opens both ways. The traveler is not the only one who can pass through, and that perhaps is the most dangerous secret of all. And so, we come full circle, from the shadowed sanctuaries of ancient Egypt to the glowing screens of our modern age. Thoth's most dangerous secret has never truly disappeared. It has only changed its costume. Whether carved in the green permanence of emerald, etched into papyrus, whispered in temple rites, or posted on obscure corners of the internet, the knowledge has always lingered like an ember waiting for the right conditions to flare. The patterns repeat. Seekers prepare, or think they do, believing they are ready to hold the weight of forbidden wisdom. Some return changed, others never return at all. The door between worlds remains what it has always been, an invitation and a test, a promise and a threat. And through it all, the figure of Thoth stands, scribe, magician, guardian, his quill poised between creation and erasure, deciding which stories are recorded and which are lost. For the casual dreamer, these are just myths, poetic ways to speak about personal growth or spiritual awakening. But for those who look deeper, who follow the breadcrumb trail of symbols and warnings, the possibility is far more unsettling. What if the legends were never only metaphor? What if the maps, the rituals, the alignments, all of it, were exactly what they claim to be? If that's true, then the choice becomes yours, as it was for every seeker before you. To search for the key, knowing the cost. To open the door, knowing it might not close. To step across, knowing you may never truly come back. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real test. Not the ritual, not the timing, not the symbols, but whether you can live with the knowledge that the door is there, waiting, and you chose to leave it shut.